Hello, everyone. Welcome to MED Media Show. Today, we have a special program. We'll be talking about a new film, a new short documentary film, directed, produced, filmed, and as well as edited by Jonny Stern. Jonny Stern from New York will be my guest. Let's first start off our show with the trailer of the documentary film, Woyane.
We know it was coming. People started blaming every Tigrayan as a criminal, as a terrorist. These are preconditions to attack people.
Ethiopian government forces have launched new airstrikes on the capital of the Tigray region.
5.2 million people urgently need humanitarian assistance.
When the war started, we were reporting about issues in Tigray. Anyone who wants to represent the voice of Tigray was under attack. We knew that they are coming after us.
Most of our journalists living in Ethiopia are on the hide. If they got caught by the dictatorial regime of Abiy Ahmed, they will get imprisoned and they will get killed.
All the symptoms show you that it is a genocide. People are denying that the people of Tigray are being attacked.
What happened on Tigrayans was done on the Armenians, on the Jews, on the Tutsis.
The war will never stop until they kill each and everyone.
Unless this TPLF dismounts, we're not going to be stopped. But the fight could be another 20 years.
My whole family are there. I left my whole family back there.
I'm trying to give them hope in my reportings. I'm trying to tell them that there is still tomorrow. Let's hang on.
በምንም ተአምር ባርነት ውስጥ አንገባም። ምንም አይነት መስዋዕትነት ለመክፈል ዝግጁ ነን። ምንም አይነት መስዋዕትነት
Jonny, welcome to EMD Media Show. Thanks for joining us today from New York. A very important work done. I must say, I had the opportunity to see the whole film. First off, when did you decide? Because I know the filming was done within few months after the start of the war in 2021. So when and how did you come to be involved in this project?
Yeah, it's quite a backstory. Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
Through everything? Okay.
Yes.
A bit of a long one, but I'll make it as brief as possible. So roughly right as the onset of the war in November 2021, I was in Costa Rica. I was actually at a surf camp in a jungle. And I met a man named DeAndre, who I ended up becoming great friends with. And he is a YouTuber. And so he knew I was a filmmaker, and he offered at one point to bring me to Ethiopia if I would help him film a personal project of his, totally unrelated to the war. And so a few weeks later, I found myself about an hour and a half outside Addis Ababa, and we heard of a conflict brewing. And so at the time, we had finished our project. I'm there with my little DSLR mirrorless camera, one little microphone, no lights. So just a very small amount of gear. And I thought, okay, there must be something I can do here. There must be some other project. Maybe I travel around Ethiopia and capture this new foreign, beautiful country. And so I started looking into places, what would be worthwhile to visit. And I found most of the places that I would want to go to were in the northern region of the country where a mysterious conflict was brewing. So I started asking around this village, what's going on there? What is this conflict about? And the answers I would get would just be all across the spectrum. One person would tell me that there's a government enforcement operation to cleanse the region of terrorist activity. Someone else would tell me that a famous singer was assassinated. And then somebody else told me that the Tigray government, the TPLF, were killing their own people. And so at this point, I got very interested and I decided, let me investigate more. Let me try to get to the bottom of what's going on there. And at the time, there was no journalistic access. And, as we know now, all electricity and telecommunication services were cut. So that's why there was no clear answer what was going on. And so the next 5 or 6 weeks, I was in Addis Ababa, really with one mission to figure out what's going on. And it wasn't until one night I was in a hostel and a young woman named Beza overheard me asking about Tigray. To this point, after 5 weeks, I still don't have a clear understanding. And she pulled me aside and she essentially said, I could show you what's going on in Tigray. And she showed me photos and videos from her family and friends of soldiers marching through her village, burning, very gruesome footage. And she assured me that this was not a government enforcement operation. This was a genocide of the Tigrayan people. And so from that point, I spent about 2 months trying to get access to actually get into Tigray. I hired a visa organization to help me get a journalist access. And ultimately, I was declined. So then I reached out to hundreds of nonprofits working in the Tigray region, such as Doctors Without Borders, UNHCR, saying, I will make you video content to raise funds for what you're doing in Tigray if you bring me in. And they said, no, we cannot do that. It is very dangerous. We had IDP camps burned to the ground. We had members of Doctors Without Borders. There was 6 people that were executed the week before I asked by Eritrean soldiers. So not a safe time to be going. And then I had one last ditch effort to try to make an exchange with tour operators. So people that do tours in the Tigray region. And I said, I will make you video content if you sneak me in to Tigray. And I was going to bring armed security with me and visit the IDP camps and visit less hostile territories to gather stories. And unsurprisingly, every company said, no, we can't do that. But one man named Andam said, I can't. There's a war. I've been deeply affected by this war. And he tried to educate me a bit. And I replied, I'm aware of the war. I'm actually looking to make a film on it. And so he offered, if I wanted to come to Nairobi, Kenya, he could introduce me to a coalition of activists and journalists and medical doctors and massacre survivors that have all been exiled and are all in hiding in Nairobi. And so then I spent the next few months in Nairobi, really with very limited access and little pockets of time that I could meet with these characters and capture a bit of what they went through and how they were largely still risking their lives on a daily basis to expose what was going on to their people and their land in Tigray, because they had spies looking for them. They couldn't really even leave their home. And so, yeah, it was a very risky operation, me being there, being a white guy with blonde hair in Nairobi, Kenya. There's a lot of attention on you, and it just takes the wrong person seeing me with a camera going into that apartment every day and then wondering, okay, what's going on in there? And so it was a bit risky, and we proceeded very cautiously. And 2.5 years later, the product is Woyane.
Interesting. I mean, actually, that answer covers a lot of questions I had in terms of why did you choose, this media group and, like you said, activities in Nairobi and so on. So it was by necessity. It was you were kind of forced to do that. So let's talk about the movie a bit. I mean, the film. So Woyane, why Woyane?
Yeah, for about a year and a half, I was reflecting on what name makes sense to this, and I think it wasn't until I saw a post by Omna Tigray on social media, and it was the celebration of the name Woyane, referring to the past Woyane rebellions under the Derg regime and under Haile Selassie, and what that it is not just the Woyane rebellion, but the spirit of what it means to be Woyane, to fight against oppression, to fight for your freedom, and this metaphysical spirit of the people of Tigray. And so I think in many cases, the Tigray genocide is known as the Third Woyane, the TDF, and the rebelling forces. And so more so, I wanted to capture, when I look at this film, what I see are horrible crimes against humanity and atrocities, but what I also see is, which is really the inspiring part for me, this immense resilience and ability to, after facing some of the darkest moments on earth, to keep going and keep risking your life to try to expose this or try to instill hope in Tigray. And so the Woyane spirit was something I felt and was inspired by, and it felt like a very appropriate name.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I mean, the war is about erasure of identity as well, right? So this, at least for the last 50 plus years, was really connected to the identity of people, irrespective of even their political orientation in Tigray. So it makes a lot of sense. One thing, for those who our viewers might say, who is Jonny? I mean, outside this. So if you can, speak to that question while I show, for those who are interested more, I have your website here as well. But who is Jonny?
Just FYI, very dated website. I'm working on a new one.
Okay.
So you could look up my IMDb, is probably more up to date than my website.
I'll bring that. So if you introduce us to yourself to the viewers.
Sure. So Jonny Stern, I'm a documentary filmmaker and a commercial director and cinematographer. And I started my journey with filmmaking about 6 years ago. I went to Emerson College Film School. And then I took a few years really just traveling the world. I visited 56 countries, and over the span of about 4.5 years. And over the course of my travels, that's really when I fell in love with documentary filmmaking. Just the conversations I would have with people, with humans. I realized these are the most compelling stories. I wanted to used to be a writer director, and the stories I would hear, just experiencing different cultures and different landscapes, I was just so inspired. And I found my path really through my travels and my human connection around the world. And now I'm really predominantly 100% just doing documentaries in film, and then I do some commercial work as well.
Great, thank you, Jonny. And so I mean, from Latin America to Addis, then within short weeks and days, ending up working in a documentary film on a major war. At that time, it was the largest war, in the world, and in terms of maybe victims, atrocities, and so on. Still one of the largest, if not the largest, over the past decade. So how would the mental process, I mean, the thought process for you going through that within a short period of time in going as a director, as a producer, as a filmer, as an editor, all in one go into this project?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was an experience that really just completely changed my life, and it changed my perspective on reality and evil that still exists, and also the complicated nature of conflict. It's not as simple as I always once thought. And I think that really the two most long-lasting effects and things that I learned, the first was my time in Addis. I really intimately got to know so many people and families and people that I felt love for, that I would consider very kind and wise individuals. And then I would see in retrospect, they were fully in support of the war, and they thought everything that was going on in Tigray was completely justified. And so I saw the behind mechanisms of what allowed them or convinced them or compelled them to feel that that was justified. And it's the effective nature of propaganda. And so I dove really deep into the propaganda behind this war. And now I just see that everywhere. I see that with every conflict. I see that with Gaza. I see that with Israel. I see that with Ukraine and Russia. And every war that Myanmar had a whole genocide based off Facebook propaganda. And so that was one really big learning lesson, that we aren't, we always, at least in America, the Holocaust is our one anchor in genocide that we refer to often. And we all think, how could they ever do that? What evil people? We're so lucky that we don't have evil people like that on earth today. And they were just normal people. They were fathers and mothers that supported that and were a part of that. And, it could happen to any of us. And so that was one really big wake-up call. But more intimately, just absorbing and hearing the stories of what happened. There is one person in the film whose identity is protected, but he was a few years younger than me. I was 24 at the time of making this film, maybe even 23. I believe he was 21, and he was in the Axum massacre. And so he witnessed his cousins get slaughtered, and he hid out in a closet, and he was looking through his window, and he would just see bodies of all his neighbors piling up in the street. And fortunately, he made it out and on foot made it to Nairobi. But just hearing his stories and the stories of Goitam, the medical doctor in Tigray, in Mekelle, they just shook me so much. And then going home and editing this footage, hundreds, if not thousands of hours of footage gathered of the atrocities and things like that, it never left me. Again, it has permanently changed me in some way. And at first it was very difficult. It's very difficult to come home and try to explain to people and see, they would put on a nice face. Oh, what can I do? Where can I donate? And it's just hard to relay, the lived experiences of people through words. And so that's why I believe so much in filmmaking. And it was crazy to see, I just did a premiere of the film with Free Tigray, and we're working towards raising money to start a film program in Tigray, which I could get more into a bit later. But it was such a special event, and it was really interesting to see my family and friends who remember when I first got home 2.5 years ago be at that event and hear from people that were personally affected by the war and watch the film and hear the stories. And I could see they got it now. After watching the film and hearing the stories, they're like, oh my God, like, when you came home and would talk about this, it felt like something in the distance, and we wanted to show concern towards it. But now I could see it got to them. And That's to me, that's the power of film. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You went to Kenya and you were filming for maybe weeks there, and given that I can't overemphasize enough in terms of you played all these roles, so you didn't have even a room to just stay away from the footage. You have to edit it, right? So tell me, you went back to the US after Nairobi, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then it must be like you're mentioning hours of footage you have, both your own footage and then footage that you use from other sources as well. So how was the process of editing all these, reliving it, if you will?
Yeah, the editing for this was the most complicated project I've done due to how little I had. I might have come back with 50 hours of footage of interviews, which is really not that much due to my limited access, and then 50 hours of visuals or something like that. But then it was really, so I couldn't work on this full time. This was self-funded. And again, I played every single role, from sound design to editing to camera to producing. So I would get pockets where I could edit this for, let's say, 2-3 months, and then I would go off, leave the country for a month or two, come back, and then I would edit more. So why it took so long was I was just missing so much material. I never made it to the war zone, and everything I would find would be 480 resolution, which is half of HD, and grainy from Telegram videos. And so I just sorted for like 1,000 hours of just watching footage and downloading and running it through AI softwares to upscale it, and then working with timelines of, let's say, 200 hours of footage and chopping that up into what is needed and pulling from news, little narrative bits to create a story where I didn't quite have what I needed, which is, it is a limited film in a certain sense, because it limited access, limited experience at the time, although I am very proud of how it turned out. So yeah, the process was long. It was very challenging. It was a big learning experience, and it was also very mentally taxing to just sit and watch. And I'm sure that anyone from Tigray can relate, because I know for years it wasn't just me watching this footage. They're sitting and watching for more than they would have liked to make sure, just to see what their family and friends are going through. And so I'm sure we can all relate in that extent.
Yeah. So the timing, because this was done, I think the filming was done early November, early 2021. So what was the decision? I know because you are self-producing, doing everything. So you had limited resource and you had to, make ends meet, so to speak, in terms of the other projects you have. So given, when you see it now, I mean, you already said that it's unlimited in that way. So whether anything that you wish you had, in terms of time, resource, you could include in this 32 minutes documentary film, Jonny?
Yeah, well, without making a different film, staying in the same vein of what this is, I wish I would have had more time with the characters to just get into day to day a bit more of what they were going through, and make it a more character driven film. It's and it is character driven, but I would like to get more into their worlds. And in addition to that, get more into the historical context of this war, because it's such a rich and complex history. I just had the time to gloss over certain things, and really what I think this film does very effectively is it focuses on the lived experiences of the people in Tigray. That's the main point, and there's not much time to get into too much of the history. It's really to show and validate and say, you're not crazy. This happened. Here's evidence. Use it. Show as many people as you can. But I would love to, get more into the nuance of things, and also hear more on the perspective of those in Addis and those in Ethiopia that feel, even to today, strongly that they have a case that this was justified. Give them a chance. We're all smart enough to make up our own minds, and let them be heard. And I think that would, if anything, strengthen the case of Tigray, because you could see it for what it is. And then if I were to make a different film, so I'm now a producer / potentially co-director of a feature documentary, and this is on a humanitarian worker that was in Tigray at the onset of the war, and she got stuck there after 15 years of experience working in UNHCR on the front lines of different conflict zones. She got stuck in Tigray for about a year without electricity or internet, and she eventually had a psychiatric breaking and got medevaced to a psychiatric center in Australia. And so now she reached out to me, and she wants to do a film of her confronting this PTSD, returning to Tigray, and more importantly, making a film that focuses on the afterburn of war. So when the guns are silenced, when the attention is gone, when everyone's now focused on the next hot war, what's left? How do people heal? What are they still going through? And really meditating on that, and also following this, again, very character-driven story through the woman Sarah as she's on her own journey. And it's also a exploration of frontline workers, which is a bit of a mystery to many people, and what they go through, and the mental consequences of that work, but also the addiction element to it, what keeps them going. So it's a dual-sided story that I think is really interesting, and kind of blends two worlds together. So that's going to be probably a 2-year project that we're just getting going with.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, very, very important. Like you said, from Tigray to Gaza, anywhere in between, we see humanitarian workers being targeted, first responders being targeted. And so this is an important project. No question about that. Let's talk about once you are done with editing and so on, it's ready. I'm sure you mentioned about one event, but it must have also, you must have had as well, close friends, maybe family members, communities, and maybe even hopefully other people who are in the decision making in different ways. If they have had a chance to watch this documentary, what's the feedback and everything that you have received so far looks like, Jonny?
Yeah, the feedback has really been very positively overwhelming, or overwhelmingly positive. People have been very, very deeply affected by it. Anyone from people that are from Tigray to people that have never heard of it, really being moved and being shocked and a bit speechless after watching it. And it's a really intense film, and it's really, I felt the best value this film could provide is to be an activist tool, and that's what I saw this being once I got into the editing room and knew, with my limited resources and limited access, this isn't going to be a feature documentary necessarily in theaters for the public to go and buy a ticket. Aside from private screenings and film festivals, this will more so be a tool of activism for education and to be shared, and not so much for entertainment. And so now what we're doing with this, I've partnered with Free Tigray in the US, and we are doing a 9-city US screening tour, which we have now the dates for DC, Toronto, and which I'll explain those at the end, the dates. But the intention behind it is we want to go to the cities where with the highest population of Tigray diaspora, and offer people an opportunity to come in person and experience it together, and to hear more about the backstory of this film, and do a Q&A, and bring family, bring friends that might not know about the war, and get a bit of historical context. And we did this in New York, and it was just so powerful and beautiful to see the community come together, many people that have never met before. And so bring these in-person experiences that are so powerful. And then ultimately, we're also doing 7 countries. It's going to be in Scandinavia. It's in London next week, Melbourne. So when that tour cycle is done, it will be released on Amazon for rent. And so the money generated on my part, there's an arrangement where the nonprofits I partner with can use it towards Tigray relief. But the money generated on my part is going towards a film initiative that I want to start in Tigray. And so I'm looking for a school or an educational organization that already pre-exists. And I would like to provide funding to open a film program. And the point behind that is, one, share my love of film with kids in Tigray, but more importantly, now weaponize the people of Tigray to tell their own stories. You know, they have so much they can say and share if done in a compelling way. If done in a compelling way, I think the world would listen, and they would love to hear it. And equally as important, you look at Gaza right now, or you look at Ukraine, I think largely why they've gotten so much outcry and support and funding is because they're all weaponized with cameras, and they've all done a very good job capturing what's going on. And the circumstances in Tigray were very difficult, but if you weaponize a community with media and storytelling and tools like that, it's a great way to ensure something like this at this scale never happens again.
Yes, very, very important in terms of accountability, documenting, and communicating it in something that people can, like you said, relate to, and so on. So the power of storytelling in form of film is, indispensable. So we are actually, maybe in a few days, we are also, coordinating, planning for a show with another filmmaker from Tigray, if the connection allows. So there is this little effort that could be empowered, many times more, with the kind of initiative you are planning, Jonny. So kudos to you on that. So tell me about, I can imagine, given the genocide, the war happened by closing down, literally Tigray, no information coming out and so on. And now this is coming slowly through the kind of project you have with Woyane film. So are you in, because you mentioned about film festivals, I can imagine this is getting deservedly awards and mentions and so on. Can you speak to that, Jonny?
Speak to the accolades?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me just let my dog inside, because he's been crying for...
Okay, sure. So our viewers, we are live with Jonny Stern, who is the director, producer, filmmaker, and editor of a new short documentary film, Woyane. We are live. He's joining us from New York. Jonny, yes, speak to that applause and awards and mentions.
Sure. Yeah, so Woyane has roughly been officially selected to premiere in about 30 film festivals globally. And amongst those you can see, if for anyone curious, you could go to woyanemovie.com, and it actually needs to be updated with all the laurels, but it's performed incredibly well, and it's won Best Documentary, I would say, at actually 13 to 15 festivals. Just looking at the site now, because this also needs to be updated. And there was a finalist at maybe 4 or 5, and then an official selection at an additional maybe 12 to 15. So it's performed extremely well. And I was actually a little surprised because I thought it would do very well in activism festivals, but in festivals that are more just open to any film, I thought it might be a bit intense. I thought they wouldn't be comfortable showing this to just any audience. And so it's actually really assuring and great to see that festivals were willing to show such provocative and unsettling content because they saw the importance of it. And yeah, so it's been very fulfilling to see. And yeah, I'm mostly excited to release this to the public and get the overarching reaction to it when that, in a few months from now, when it's made available on Amazon.
Great. Yes, I think our viewers, you can access this, and as it gets updated, you can check for yourself, woyanemovie.com, as you see it on the screen. And maybe final question, Jonny. So what would you, if you, because I had a chance to talk to a photojournalist from Spain who made it to Tigray, and we had a conversation here on the media, and I'm doing this with you and other people who directly or indirectly were trying to document and so on. So what would you advise, given that the state actors, whether it's in Tigray or outside Tigray, they may not be doing what should be done in terms of exposing the atrocities and accountability, and hopefully as well some legal procedures and so on. So you mentioned a couple of times about the activism. So what would be your advice, given that you were immersed in this project and now it's final and you are starting another project, maybe, who knows, maybe other number of projects as well? What would be your tips and your advice for them?
As far as activism in the media sphere?
Yes, in the media and in the filmmaking and, all this.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great question. It depends on their goal. And I think different organizations serve different purposes and have different audiences. But one piece of advice, I think, for anyone that's really looking to reach a Western audience that has no correlation to Tigray or to Africa, and would be kind of apathetic towards it because they have their own lives, they have their own concerns. They might be Jewish and are focused on Israel, or they might be Arab and are focused on Gaza. I would say focusing on the stories and less on quantity and information and stats. And I'm just such a believer that, a million people is a statistic, one person is a tragedy. And when you know somebody, when you hear their story, when you tell that story in an effective way, somebody is forever changed. And it's hard to even wrap your head around the numbers we hear out of Tigray. And I know they're changing a bit now, but from what I heard for a very long time was 600,000 civilians and 150,000 women subjected to extreme sexual violence. Like, these are numbers that you can't even really wrap your head around. So you hear, not to compare, but you hear 10,000 in Gaza, 600,000 in Tigray. You can't even comprehend, the quantity of difference. And, Gaza's only been a month or so, but, what reaches people is humanization and stories. And so taking a really storytelling approach to maybe your social media activism and thinking through, if you knew nothing about this, what is going to compel me to want to learn more and to support and champion this cause as well.
Great. So maybe I think we should wrap up with if you have the dates and places for our viewers. I really highly recommend by any means to get the opportunity to watch this important documentary film.
Yes. Okay, so we have 3 dates set tentatively. December 17th is DC. Toronto, which is going to be a big one, is January 7th. And Boston is tentatively January 17th. And Boston, we're looking to do a presentation at Harvard and also rent out a 600-person theater. So Boston is also going to be a very big one. And then we are looking to dates to be set, go to Atlanta, Denver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Las Vegas. And for those that might be overseas, there is one in London approaching in 5 days, so it might be a bit soon. And then there's a Scandinavia tour in 4 different theaters coming in February. But I would suggest you can either follow me on Instagram, which is JONNY_STERN. And I will be updating on screenings and dates. And you could also follow for the US screenings, Free Tigray. And I'm in direct partnership with them on all US screenings, and they'll be updating on dates and locations and campaigns.
So if you missed the Instagram address, it's Jonny, as you can see it on the screen. Maybe let me just put it. So this is Jonny_Stern, STRN, as you can see on the screen, and you can contact him if you find it easy, or if you are not into Instagram and so on. Contact UMD Media as well. We'll make sure we connect with Jonny. We'll connect you with Jonny on this and any question you might have. Jonny, I thank you very much for your time. We were having the plan to do it yesterday, and you made it today. I'm glad, and hopefully, with your upcoming projects with the film school or with humanitarian focused film project, we will again talk about your products and projects. Thank you very much for your time for today.
Thank you for having me. Anytime. I'd be happy to come back.
Great. Best wishes from UMD Media.
Okay. Cheers, my brother.
Bye. You have been following us live in my conversation with Jonny Stern, who is the producer, director, editor, and filmmaker of the new short documentary film, Woyane. And you can follow events, awards, and any recognitions and any information you want, images as well, at woyanemovie.com. And we will also broadcast this on satellite to Tigray and the Horn of Africa, or under SBS on broadcasting services. And صباح نقوه مس نقو 11 AM مس ጌታቸው ውራይና ክንምለሲና ኣብ ሕሉ ኩነታት ትግራይ ምስ ጋዜጠኛ ጌታቸው አረጋዊ ወይም ጌታቸው ውራይና ናይ ውራይና መጽሔት ዋና አሰናዳን በዓል ዋናን ክንመፅኢና ማለት እዩ ፅባሕ ተፀበዩና ካሊእ ዝሓለፈ ቀዳም ኣመሓላሊፍናዮ ዝነበርና ላይቭ ናይ ኣውሮፓ ናይ 30 ዓመት ናይ ትግራይ ጆኖሳይድ ዝኽሪ ፅባሕ እውን ካብቲ ላይቭ ክንኮነሉ ሰዓት ወፃእ ዘሎ ከነመሓላልፍ ኢና ላይቭ ማለት እዩ ካብ ኣውሮፓ ዮም ጅሚድ ሕዝብልኩም ክመፅእ እዩ ብስምረት ተጋሩን ብማሕበር ተጋሩ ኣውሮፓን ዝተዘጋጀየ ማለት እዩ ሰብስክራይብ ዘይገበርኩም ግበሩ ላይክ ሸር ገይርኩም ውፁ ንብዙሓት ምእንቲ ዩቲዩብ ከባፅሐልና የቀኒየልና እቲ ናይ ሙቪ መዓልትታት ተኸታተልኩም እቲ ሙቪ ረእይዎ ብጣዕሚ ያው እቲ ዝበፅሐ ፀገም ብዝተኻለ መጠን ዝሓዘ ሙቪ እዩ ንኣክቲቪዝም ተጠቐምሉ ሃም ጆኒ ዝበለና ማለት እዩ ሰላማት ደሓን ዋዕሉ ደሓን ሕደሩ